Marinero, the sick podcast talking Habs GM. What else? It was Wednesday that the virtual interview started for the vacant Habs GM job. Today is Friday, and we're hearing that today should be the end of round one of the interviews. We heard there were anywhere between 8 to 10 candidates, and Patrick Roy was supposed to be one of them. Yesterday, around noon, Patrick Roy told members of the media that as of Thursday, 12 p.m., he was not scheduled for any interviews. He had not heard from the Montreal Canadiens as of then. The big question is, why? Joining me to discuss from the Montreal Gazette and What the Puck, Brendan Kelly, what's going on?
You know what's going on, Tony?
Yeah.
Patrick Roy is not the next GM of the Montreal Canadiens. That's what's going on. I told you this before. Yeah. Jeff Molson will never hire Patrick Roy.
I needed you to tell me that the Canadiens weren't going to hire Patrick Roy. Mositu now. Mositu.
You see, you need. That's why you need to talk to me, Tony, to set you straight. But no, but a lot of people are saying, well, look, it's the French-English thing. In the French side of things, in the Francophone media, in the Francophone fan base, it's like, oh my goodness, Patrick Roy, the savior, Casso has to come to the rescue.
Hold on. A very emotional fan base that remembers Patrick Roy as backstopping the Canadiens to 2 cups in 86 and 93. He's a legend. He's Casso. He's Leroy. He's St. Patrick. He's their idol. He's a gagnant. And because he won cups as a goalie, they believe he will deliver cups as a GM. Nonsense, I say. Nonsense.
You know what? It's just it's just a hypothetical discussion vis-a-vis Patrick Roy. You know Jeff Molson. I know Jeff Molson. Jeff Molson will never have Patrick Roy working for him. He just won't. It's like the mix of personalities there is, Jeff Molson, you like him.
Would you?
It's not my favorite candidate, but you know what? I mean, it's maybe I kind of like him better as a coach. I mean, there's this whole thing. Could it be because he did great that first year in Colorado? It all went south after that. But he could really one of the things that the Canadiens have been missing for a very long time behind the bench is a little fire, is a little sizzle. He would bring that. And listen, as a journalist, we'd love to have Patrick Roy somewhere in the Canadiens organization, but it's not going to happen. He's not going to be the coach. He's not going to be the GM. I'd be surprised they even talk to him.
I would be surprised if they don't talk to him. Look, there's a lot of pressure from a certain sector of the media, and a certain sector of the fan base, which forms the majority in Quebec, and that is Francophones in Quebec, French-speaking Quebecers. He has called out, basically, he's come out and said, hey, what do they have to lose to give me a shot? They've been going round and round for over 20 years. I'd be very surprised if they don't have some kind of discussion with him.
Well, how come they haven't talked to him?
Well, that's the $1,000,000 question. So I have one or two opinions on that. Number one, they probably are limited with their time and probably want to name a general manager sooner rather than later. They look at his baggage of experience and they say he automatically qualifies for round 2 of interviews. That could be the first thing. The second thing is that they will interview him, but not right now for the GM job, but for a possible coaching job. Because if we recall, back in 2012, when the Canadiens interviewed Marc Bergevin for the vacant GM job, and Julien Brisebois and Blair Mackesy and Pierre Maguire, and the list goes on and on, Patrick Roy was interviewed, but for the job of coach, not the job of GM. So they viewed him as a coach then. You view him as more of a coach now. So do I. So they probably will interview him at some point, but for a coach, not for a GM, which I don't think he'll get the job either as coach.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I mean, I think the problem with him as a coach, and we all know this, is the problem that they ran into in Colorado, which is the guy's ego is so absolutely gigantic that he won't be able to live with the concept that he doesn't have a say on what players he gets to get behind the bench. And this whole discussion, I mean, it's very interesting, and again, it's a French-English thing. Jeff Gorton has been hired as executive vice president of hockey operations for the Montreal Canadiens. This is a very radical move on the part of Jeff Molson. Up until now, it was like it had to be a French language GM and a French language coach. And there's this whole discussion who's got the last word. We know who has the last word. It's going to be Jeff Gorton. He is the boss, and he's not a francophone. So this is a very significant thing. And there's
it's even more significant now that all the francophones have actually realized that that's the case, that the GM in disguise is Jeff Gorton. Now, that doesn't mean that the GM they're going to hire is going to mean a puppet. There's going to be a puppet. It just means that Jeff Gorton will have final say. It's a Sick Podcast. It's brought to you by Cherry River Hard Seltzer. Only 90 calories, natural flavors, no preservatives. Now available in Quebec grocery stores and at the beer store. We are doing something, Brendan, on the Sick Podcast on our social media channels. And you can follow us on Instagram at the Sick Podcasts. Follow our Facebook page, the Sick Podcast, and follow us on YouTube at the Sick Podcast. Subscribe. It's absolutely for free. But on Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter, what we're doing right now is we have a box of all the candidates: Patrick Roy, Kent Hughes, Stéphane Quintal, Émilie Castonguay, Daniel Sauvageau, Daniel Brière, Mathieu Dash, Roberto Luongo, Mac Denis. List goes on and on. We have a box, and we ask you to vote and to eliminate one. And I want to let you know, the first candidate that was eliminated, who got the most votes to be eliminated, was Patrick Roy. The second candidate, I have been told, is Stéphane Quintal. We'll find out who candidate number 3 or the third one to be eliminated will be. But go there and vote on our social media channels, on our Twitter, on our Instagram, on our Facebook at the Sick Podcast. Brendan?
Well, very surprising. And again, I mean, imagine, look at what people are saying in Francophone Quebec, which is far and away the majority of people who are here in Quebec. They're like Patrick Roy is the savior. Essentially Sick Podcast polling is mostly, I'm assuming, Anglophones. They kick Patrick out of the race right away. I think it says all you need to know, that it's become a kind of linguistic political thing. So the first thing you have to say about that, all the talk about Kent Hughes, forget it. It's not good enough to speak French. This GM must be a francophone. It must be someone whose first language is French. So that's the first thing. And the other thing, there's a whole discourse amongst the francophones that I know who are saying, you know what, this and you just sort of reference that, is this GM will be a puppet. That's absurd. Why would you say that? I mean, why can't the boss is going to be Jeff Gorton? No question about it. And at the end of the day, the ultimate boss is Jeff Molson. But the hockey boss is going to be Gorton. But why can't he get a Mathieu Darche or an Émilie Castonguay? These are great people. They're super smart people. They know a lot about management. They know a lot about hockey. It's a collaborator. But yes, at the end of the day, if you're in a fight, and Émilie Castonguay says the person I want in the draft is Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Jeff Gorton says, you know what? I like Kotkaniemi, but he's a number 15 pick, not a number 3 pick. Well, Jeff Gorton wins that argument. I mean, it's only normal.
Well, neither are actually going to decide. In the end, you leave that to the director of amateur scouting, who, in my world, would have been Martin Madden Jr., who occupies the role of assistant general manager with the Anaheim Ducks. After a conversation with François Gagnon of RDS last time around on the Sick Podcast a couple of days ago, he says, based on what he's hearing, that permission was not granted because the Ducks want to keep him within their organization. I don't blame them. I think it's unfortunate. I would have loved for him to join the Canadiens. His track record is very impressive.
But that one is very rare. In general, my understanding of how the National Hockey League works is they almost always grant permission. They give the person the chance to get another job. So that's kind of surprising. The other guy that I was wondering about, and maybe I'm just late to the party here.
Pardon me. Maybe he's going to be their GM in Anaheim, and that's why they didn't grant permission.
But what about Martin Brodeur? Did he just say, I mean, is it just that he's not that interested? That's the kind of rumblings I'm hearing, because that guy is talk about a Quebecois icon, another iconic Quebecois goalie who's way up there in the New Jersey Devils organization. I've talked to Martin Brodeur about hockey, super, super insightful mind. I mean, he's got so much experience. Is it that he's just happy in Newark? And it's funny, we never talk about this
But
guy.
hold on a second. I like Marty a lot. Now, does Marty have experience as a general manager?
He's I don't know the exact position he has with the
No.
Devils, but he's isn't he special advisor to the president, something along those lines?
So he is not a general manager.
None of these people are. None of them are. There's
perfect. So now hear me out for a second. Martin Brodeur is, as much as I like Marty, I just think about what would happen, okay, if you'd name Martin Brodeur general manager. For sure, a lot of people would love it, but Martin Brodeur is not a GM. Martin Brodeur is not an assistant GM. And Martin Brodeur is not a former coach. Martin Brodeur is not a former scout. And Martin Brodeur is not a former Montreal Canadien. Patrick Roy is not an NHL GM, but he was an NHL coach. He was an NHL Coach of the Year. He was a VP of hockey ops along with being the coach. He's been a GM and head coach in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League for over a decade. And he's a former Montreal Canadiens goalie icon legend who won 2 cups here. Could you imagine if you hired Brodeur instead of Roy? As much as some people would like it, you get crucified at the same time.
It's a free world. I don't like, I'm saying I'm Jeff Molson, I'm Jeff Gorton. We made a decision. We decided Patrick Roy's not the guy. What, I'm going to get my decision dictated by Le Journal de Montréal? I mean, that's the problem with the Habs in the last 30 years is it's been run by Réjean Tremblay. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. You can make up your own mind. We don't want Patrick Roy. Sorry, not the guy that we want. I mean, why can't you say I prefer Martin Brodeur? And I was just looking up. He was special assistant to general manager Doug Armstrong in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And now he's way up in the Devils hierarchy. He's got a lot of experience. None of the people on the list are GMs. There is not a GM there. There's no qualified francophone GMs there.
There's no assistant GMs either. Matthew Darche may be occupying a role that has some assistant GM responsibilities, but his exact title is Director of Player Personnel, if memory serves me well.
Brodeur is Executive Vice President of Business Development for the New Jersey Devils. I mean,
yeah, it's far from being a GM, Brendan.
It is far from being a GM, but you know what? One of the things, if you look at those 9 or 10 candidates, none of them have that much experience. I mean, everyone's saying, they don't have
to. The GM is Gorton.
I agree. So Brodeur has as much experience as these guys. You know, people talking about Daniel Briere as a front runner, right? A lot of sort of knowledgeable columnists saying that. What's his experience? He's president of the ECHL team. I mean, 3rd-tier league. I mean, hasn't even been in an executive position in the AHL, never mind the NHL. You know? And I'm not saying Briere is a bad choice. I'm just saying these guys, you know, you're talking about Stéphane Quintal, and a lot of people saying he's a great choice. I mean, I guess your listeners tossing him off the list. But, you know, what's Quintal's experience? What's his executive experience with an NHL team?
His experience is dealing with Bettman and Daly in terms of Department of Player Safety and having those ongoing conversations around the league. I don't think he's a great candidate. By the way, he's gone on record as saying that if it wasn't for the president's job, he wouldn't be interested. And now it's a GM job, and it appears like he may be interested. I don't know. I haven't heard him on the record. Look, Briere's a good guy, but let's put the cards on the table. There are many that hold something against Briere. And that is when he was in the prime of his career, he had a chance to come here as an unrestricted free agent and sign a deal that was going to pay him upwards of $50 million in total. And he refused, citing a family decision, saying, my family wants to stay where we are, and we're not coming to Montreal. A lot of people hold that against them. And you know what? I kind of understand the argument.
Totally
here's
get it.
Here's the guy who's going to be asked, if I can, Brendan, here's a guy who's going to be asked, Daniel, what are you going to do to sway free agency or unrestricted free agents here when you yourself chose not to come here in the prime of your career? He's going to have to get creative with his answer there. And he could probably spin a negative into a positive, but he's going to have to get creative there.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. I mean, and when he ends up with the Habs, he's pretty well a shadow of his former self, kind of a washed up player by that point, right? I mean, he was not a big factor on that Habs team, and he had the chance to come and he didn't. And you know what? One of the biggest problems that, we keep talking about this idea that we haven't had that scoring star for 25 to 30 years. Well, one of the ways you could potentially get that star is through free agency. And it is one of the biggest problems that's faced the Canadiens is they haven't been able to get those kind of free agents because bottom line is a lot of players don't want to come to Montreal. And one of the ironies is Quebec players don't like coming to
Perfect. Montreal. So knowing that players don't like to come here because of media scrutiny, fan pressure, maybe the weather, there's no beach, can't play too much golf here during the season, that is, can't go fishing. List goes on and on, the roads, the this, the that, the traffic, all that stuff. So think about this for a second. I'm going to name you some names, okay? You ready?
Yeah.
McDavid, Draisaitl, Matthews, Marner, Kane, Taves, Makar, Sasha Barkov, Jonathan Huberdeau. What do these players have in common?
They're drafted by the team that they play for.
And they're all drafted in the top 4.
Correct.
Now, I know the Canadiens struck out in a couple of their draft picks they had when they chose 3rd overall, but unfortunately, you have to draft in the top 4 or 5 for several years, and you have to be lucky that they're going to be good years. Now, if you can't get the free agent here, then what's going on right now when the Montreal Canadiens statistically have the worst winning percentage in hockey is the best thing that can happen to this organization right now.
But you got
providing the best chance to win the lottery or get as good a pick as possible. And if they don't win the lottery, they can't mess it up. And I'm happy they are where they are in the standings because it gives them a solid shot at Shane Wright. And I'd be even happier if they're even worse next year. So it gives them a solid shot at Connor Bedard, who's even more of a better player, who's generational talent.
You're absolutely right. And I think the fact of the matter is you got to make use of those picks. And it was so significant in the press conference where Jeff Molson was announcing that he was firing Marc Bergevin, Trevor Timmins, and Paul Wilson, that he said one of the reasons that this was happening, in particular for Timmins, was he blew 2 number 3 picks. And we can go through this and that, and Galchenyuk year wasn't a good year, this, and he blew 2 number 3 picks. You cannot afford to do that. And so when you come to what's happening in the next couple of years, they can't F it up again. And Jeff, the other thing to keep in mind is Jeff Molson's been on the job for, I'm thinking it was 08 or 09. So it's been 12 years. He has to succeed with Jeff Gorton. If this fails, can he come back from that? So they need to, you're right, they need to get that top pick. They're going to get the top pick.
I think he will, by the way. I have a lot of confidence in Jeff Gorton. I'm so excited about the future. That's where matrixhomefitness.ca comes into play, Brendan, because I want to be around for a long time because I want to see Shane Wright in a Canadiens uniform, or I want to see Connor Bedard, or I want to see Mitch Goff. So bring it home. Do like me. Get yourself a treadmill or some cardio equipment, a club quality workout in the comfort of your own home. Visit matrixhomefitness.ca. I picked up the Matrix T75 with the XUR console. Brendan, you got to see it. It's almost as beautiful as you.
I'm looking at the results of it just on this screen here, Tony. I mean, obviously, it's fantastic.
Hold on a second. It doesn't show that I've lost a few pounds. Look carefully.
You're looking good. You're looking good, and I'm kind of liking the little goatee there. Is this this is a 22 look for Tony?
I'm not liking the white hairs all that much, but yeah, this was. By the way, you know the whole goatee thing?
No, I don't.
Early on, when I started off in the business, they were calling me to do television. And sometimes they would call me, back to back and stuff like that. And I didn't like shaving because when I shave often, I often get irritated or get a rash and stuff like that.
You're a sensitive guy.
Yeah. So I did laser hair removal, but I didn't complete it, and I had left the goatee. So now I don't grow hair here, but the goatee continues to grow.
Wow.
So
looking good. I'm impressed.
Thank you. How about my hair that I
Yeah, the hair's looking good too. I mean, you
I
know,
trim my own hair, by the way. I trim my own
it's
hair.
tough. I know it's tough for you to do a podcast with me because, like, the hair thing it's tough. I mean, the bar is
Yeah.
it's raised to a certain heavy metal level with me. You know.
Yeah.
So.
You look like Richard Gere, come to think of it. All right. Now that we've finished throwing each other flowers and some compliments here. All right. How do you think it's going to end up?
You know, it's a super interesting thing. It's a super, like, I'm with you. Look, I spent 9 years blasting Marc Bergevin, so I've got to be excited. I love the Jeff Gorton decision. I love that Jeff Molson he's ruffled some feathers. The French media are furious with him with this thing of getting an English guy to run the hockey.
Well, yes and no. I actually think it's one of the most brilliant things that Jeff has ever done.
I agree.
Hiring Jeff Gorton, but appeasing the media by giving them a general manager that will speak French. I think it's brilliant.
And but
like circumventing the cap.
No, that's it. It's a sleight of hand, but at the same time, if you get someone good, like, let's take an example. I think an excellent candidate is Matthew Darche. I don't think he's going to come here just because he's got such a great setup in Tampa. But let's say he does, and let's say he, like, for personal reasons, he'd rather be back here in Montreal. Why would that not be a great duo, Gorton and Darche? Or, pick whichever one.
It can be a great duo.
Emily Castonguay, I don't know her personally, but I'm thinking she's got a couple of degrees. She's
got a law degree. She's brilliant.
Right. And she's brilliant. She's also a player agent representing some top players.
Yes.
And, like, Gorton, like, kind of like he showcased a little bit of what he was looking for when he said, I'm thinking of, maybe being a little bit out of the box, and I want someone to complement me. So Gorton's a guy who's got real life GM experience. He's been very successful in Boston, extremely successful with New York Rangers, and turned the Rangers around really quickly. So he's got the GM experience. So he doesn't need someone who's already been a GM. Player agent. I mean, listen, the Pierre Lacroix story. I mean,
yes.
That I'm very tight with the sort of Celine Dion camp. René Angelil called Marcel Aubu. You know that story. Right?
Yeah.
Angelil called Aubu and he said him and Angelil and Lacroix, great friends, says, try out Pierre Lacroix, who turned out to be a brilliant general manager. What did Pierre Lacroix do before he was general manager? He was a player agent, of course, representing famously Roy, and he's got more experience. He had more experience as an agent than Emily Castonguay, but it is a path to becoming a GM. So, but why would she have to be a puppet? I'd say you have.
Well, this is what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the Canadiens hire a couple of those candidates.
Sure.
Make one the general manager, make one the assistant general manager, make one head of another department, whatever. Maybe they hire three. I believe in spending money on good people. I believe in spending money on good talent. I believe in preparing as well for tomorrow. Some of these executives are going to move on. Some of them will stay. Jeff Gorton one day might move on. The general manager one day might move on. The assistant general manager, because what happened here before under Marc Bergevin is Marc Bergevin had Scott Mellenby and Trevor Timmins as his assistant general managers. Mellenby was really his right-hand man. All three of those gentlemen, they shared the same strength. Player evaluation. In Timmins' case, it was at the amateur level. In Bergevin and Mellenby's case, it was at the pro level. None of them had skill sets that the other didn't have, right? And when the Canadiens needed to name another general manager, for obvious reasons, it was not going to be Mellenby and B. Timmins, one of which was they didn't speak French. And another was because maybe they were in the exact same mold as a Marc Bergevin. So what I would do is hire a couple people, different skill sets. We know they're going to be French speaking, and one will be the general manager now, and one may be the general manager 5 years from now.
No, I'm absolutely on the same page as you, Tony. I mean, look, Montreal Canadiens, the one thing that they have, right, is a lot of money. They're once again third on the Forbes list of the most valuable NHL teams. They've got fantastic revenue, fantastic profit. There's no salary cap behind the scenes. There's a salary cap for the players. So you can spend to the limit, and you're so right about that. Like people have been joking about it was bicep management. You say they're the same kind of guys. They're all like, are you passing me $100?
No, we're just talking about money and just
I thought because I said I was on the same page as you were giving me $500.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go.
I didn't really think you carried around bills as small as 50s, Tony. I thought it was just the word I heard is you're just $100 bill kind of guy.
No. I have 50s too. Brendan, listen to me. I'm Italian. There's no Italian that walks around with less than $1,000 in his pocket. It just doesn't work. Mind you, I think I got less than 1,000.
The other thing, my kid played hockey for years with a lot of Italian kids from LaSalle. You know what? The thing about the dads on the team, they all had fantastic shoes.
Yes.
It's amazing. Fantastic.
Very important.
Us Anglo guys, I got like the beat up sneakers. You guys, you all have, the designer shoes. It's the middle of winter. You're wearing these shoes.
Yeah.
So those guys.
By the way, that money I have in my pocket, I've had the same amount for the last 4 years.
No, exactly. You've never spent a dime in the last 10 years. But
not unless it's on shoes.
Remember, they said, was it? I'm trying to think if it was Paling or Caulfield. One of the guys, they said, "What do you give us?" Because all the management guys go to see the pick, and I'm trying to remember which. It was one of the two guys, either Paling or Caulfield, and they said, "What's your impression of these Habs managers?" And the guy says, "They've got really big biceps." Right? That was Bergevin and Timmins and what's his name, Mellenby. They were just pumping iron at the
Martin
gym.
Lapointe.
Yeah, they're all.
Martin Lapointe. Listen, good for them, man. Good for them.
Not good for them. It was ridiculous.
Wait, it's ridiculous that they're in great shape.
They're not in great shape. Listen, Mark, you're 57 or whatever. Just stop trying to compete with the players. Stay in good shape. You don't need to build up. I'm in fantastic shape, Tony, as you know, out playing hockey all the time. I don't have to build up my biceps.
I can't. Hold on a second. I can't believe you're saying this. First of all, pumping weights is great for weight loss. All right. Not that I'm an expert in this whole matter.
No, yeah.
But I can't believe that you're upset that they're in great shape.
They're not in great shape.
You should be upset with the players that they weren't in shape like they were.
You know what? I was at Osheaga one year backstage. Who do I see? And it was funny. I see Marc Bergevin there.
Yeah.
And he's in this T-shirt that's like, it's like painted on his body, and then he's got those jeans that are so tight and they're all ripped jeans. And it's like his arms are exploding out. It's absurd. You don't need that at 57. You are
100% envious of the shape that Marc Bergevin is in. I can't believe that. Hold on a second. I can't believe that you crapped on him for 9.5 years. He was relieved of his duties about a month ago, and a month later, you're still crapping on him. Can you have some pity, please? Please stop.
Why should I have some pity? I mean,
now you're picking on his biceps.
Did you see Marc Bergevin? He was on the bye-bye.
Yeah.
He turned on the bye-bye with Paul Wilson, and they do a routine, and they say, "What are you having for?" Your biceps are better than mine, but I'm in better shape than you because I play all this hockey. But so they asked Marc Bergevin, "What are you having for your réveillon?" And you know what he says? "Pudding chômeur. J'ai plus de job," which was very funny, actually.
It was brilliant.
Sorry for him. He's fine.
It was brilliant. And I like people that like to poke fun at themselves.
Yeah, but they were a little nasty with Molson, I thought. They had, and you were counting.
What do you think Marc Bergevin's up?
He'll never work again as a GM. That's for sure.
That's my view. Really?
I'd be surprised. You see him as a GM?
He was an assistant general manager with the Chicago Blackhawks. He was director of player personnel. He was a scout. He was assistant coach. He was the GM of the Montreal Canadiens for 9.5 years. Yeah, I think he's going to be a general manager in the National Hockey League again if he wants to. Now, speaking of National Hockey League, any player, any team, we spoke about some stars before, any sport, sportbuffshop.com for all of your officially licensed sports apparel and our sick merchandise as well. Use code SICK15 for 15% off on all of their items. All right, so you don't think Marc Bergevin is going to be a GM anywhere?
I mean, look, you're saying he is. I'm saying he could be, but I look at his track record and I say it's not that successful. But the NHL does have this thing where they're like,
probably wasn't, but he came within 3 wins of winning the Stanley Cup. So
He did not.
I believe if he wants to be a GM, he will be.
No, hang on a sec, Tony. We've been through this before. They did not come within 3 games of winning the Stanley Cup. They won 1 game in the. You really think so? How come if that was so great, what a greatly constructed team? How come Jeff Molson fired him like a couple of months later? Because
I didn't say it was greatly constructed or it wasn't or this or that or whatever. And I'm not saying they didn't get there because they didn't have an element of luck or what. I'm saying he made it to the Stanley Cup final. He did. That's a fact.
That is a fact.
You're going to have to live with. Unfortunately, I know you don't. You have to live with it. It's a fact.
I think it's like that. You remember that season of Dallas when it turned out the whole season was a dream? That's what I think of that Stanley Cup run. Is it? No, but seriously, they were never. I'll just leave it at that. They were never going to win the Stanley Cup. Can we at least agree on that? No.
Well, I mean, if Tampa, if Kucherov and Point and Stamkos and Killorn and Hedman and Sergachev and McDonough and Vasilevsky were going to get hurt all at the same time, I think they would have.
Right, quite possible. That could have been a strategy. Take the.
Hey, when I talk to you again next week,
yes,
or so. How many GM candidates will have been eliminated from the process, and will the Canadiens 1 week from today already have their GM?
I don't think so. I think they're, one of the things that Gorton kind of made clear is he's not going to be in a rush to do this, which is part of what we're saying. He is the GM, so he doesn't need a GM right this exact second. I mean, he's got to do it within a few weeks, but he could probably go even right up to the trade deadline and he can do all that stuff himself, right? It's not like there's no one running the ship. Jeff Gorton is running the ship. So I'd say it'll take a couple of weeks. One of the interesting things, and with Chantal Machabée taking over as head of communications, how transparent will they be? Like, will they tell us, we talked to Briere and he's no longer on the list? Are they going to, sort of tell us who was on, who was off? Who's left? We got 3 people. Probably not, right? I mean, companies.
I will say this. I don't know the answer to that, but with Chantal at the helm as VP of Communications, I think that the Canadiens will be more transparent than they probably have been in a very, very long time, maybe even ever have been. And I'm not just saying that because I hope for that to be the case. I'm saying that because I really believe that will be the case. And I never met anyone who didn't love Chantal. Listen, it's a huge advantage to be working as a reporter and in the media to now occupy that role because you know exactly what was working and what wasn't working. And Chantal, better than anyone, has a pulse on that. Chantal, better than anyone else, knows how important it is for the fans to get close to this team again. And I hope, and this will be a discussion for another day, I hope that in the very short term, the fan base, because I don't care about myself, but the fan base will hear from Carey Price and Shea Weber, because the fact that these 2 players, the 2 most important players on the team, the franchise goalie and the captain, until proven otherwise, haven't said a word to the fans behind the microphone, on TV or on radio for over 6 months, in my opinion, is very unacceptable. And it's disappointing.
Outrageous. And here's another thing that might not go down well with all of our English listeners and viewers, but how about 3 or 4 words in French too? Show some respect. And in general,
I agree with you 100%. The fact that Carey Price, who's been here for 15 years, idolized by this fan base, and look, I'm very sensitive to what he's gone through. Really, I am. But he had 15 years to learn French. Okay, it's not. I had 15 years to learn a word or 2, to conduct an interview. And the same thing goes for Shea Weber. And I find it disappointing. I find it disappointing.
How come all these players on the other pro sports teams in Montreal can make that effort and the Canadiens guys can't? Brendan Gallagher, it's outrageous. He's played his whole career here.
Jeff Gorton, 30 seconds after he was here, said more words in French than Carey Price and Shea Weber said together in the last 15. And you know what? I get it. He was advised that it would probably be a good thing to do, and he probably had it prepared for him, but he did it. All right. On that note,
Carey's not saying, he's skating. We want to know what's going on with Carey Price. What's going on? Like, how are you?
Fans want to know. The fans want to know. The fans want to know from Carey Price if this team goes in a reset or a rebuild for the next 3 or 4 years. Does he still want to be a part of it? They want to know how he's doing. There's a lot of things they want to know. Once again, I think it's disappointing. You know who's not disappointing? You.
Fantastic.
And you know what the Canadians should do? Hire as many people as possible because, yes, A, they are a wealthy organization, and B, you would even pony up the money for them because nobody I know has more money than you.
Oh, I can't even bring out my roll of bills, Tony. It's too thick.
You have thousands. All right, $1,000 bills. He's Brendan Kelly. I'm Marinaro. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Sick Podcast, and join us on our YouTube channel at The Sick Podcast. Subscribe. It's absolutely free. Why? Because this podcast is sick, and I'm not just talking about he and I.
Fantastic. See you later.
Cheers, bud. Have a good one.